Welcome back to Snetterton for our third and final race of the weekend for the Radical Challenge Championship. The slightly longer pit stop race with a mandatory pit stop for all of the drivers and success seconds as well for some of them to worry about. Let's have a look at the way that the grid lines up for this final race of the weekend. It's Oliver Barker that's on pole position with Steve Burgess alongside. Dominic Jackson and Jack Lang are there on row number 2. Richard Baxter has Mark Richards for company on row 3, and it's Jack Manchester and Elliot Goodman on row 4 with Jason Rishover and Mark Maloney completing the top 10 cars on the grid. So the safety car is just bringing them round through Coram. Oliver Barker already twice a race winner so far this weekend, having won both of the sprint races. What might he be able to do in his third and final race of the weekend? He has an extra 15 success seconds to spend in the pits, the man on pole. Steve Burgess, the man alongside, an extra 20 seconds to spend in the pits. Dominic Jackson is off scratch, no additional time for him to worry about. And Jack Lang, who's on row 2 of the grid, an extra 5 seconds to spend in the pit lane. Richard Baxter on row 3 has an extra 5 seconds. And Mark Richards, who joins him on that third row, no additional time penalty to spend in the pits. The red lights are on as they go out now. It's a good start from Oliver Barker, who's got his nose ahead of Steve Burgess, and it looks as though Jack Lang was looking to try and squeeze his way through as well as they charge their way up towards Ritchie's corner for the first time. Everybody safely through the right-hander at Ritchie's, and it's Oliver Barker that's taken up the early lead in this final race of the weekend here, with Steve Burgess in second place, and it's Dominic Jackson in third place. That's a spin further down through the order. Brian Murphy having to sweep round in avoidance, and the spin is for the number 52 car of Mark Richards, who's pointing the wrong way, unfortunately, at what is Wilson Corner. And he's not the only one with a problem, because there's one car that's in the middle of the pack that's got lots of smoke billowing from the tail end of it. I suspect that's just bodywork rubbing on the tyre. Mark Richards gets going, knocks a bit of debris out of the way. He has tumbled to the tail end of the field. Elliot Goodman, in the meantime, out of Agostini, loses a place to Mark Maloney, and there's a slowing car there on the right-hand side of the circuit, so everybody having to swerve their way in through and past what looks like Jason Rishover's car that's slowing down. So looks as though Jason Rishover has encountered problems early on in the race. Oliver Barker leads the race. Steve Burgess second, Dominic Jackson there in third place as they head onto the Bentley straight for the first time. You can still see that smoke coming from the tail end of one of the cars that's still inside the top 10, but it's going to be Barker from Burgess, Dominic Jackson from Jack Manchester, then Jack Lang and Richard Baxter, and the car that's got the smoke coming from the tail end of it is car number 18. That's Sean Burns' car that, as I say, I think it's just a bit of the fiberglass bodywork rubbing on one of the Dunlop slick tyres that all of these cars run. Hopefully that won't cause him too much of a problem. Further down through the order, number 20 Mark Crader fighting away with what was Brian Murphy there, as the race leader is about to head out of Murray's over the start-finish line and conclude the first lap of the race. Oliver Barker needing ideally to build a margin and an advantage. He knows come the pit window he'll have to remain stationary for an extra 15 seconds compared to some, and out of the car, surveying the damage, is poor old Jason Rishover, wondering exactly what the problem was. All of a sudden the car seemed to slow as it came out of Agostini, but that's it, not even a lap completed for the unfortunate Jason Rishover. As for Steve Burgess in second place, well, he's now under pressure from Dominic Jackson, who's also got the light blue car of Jack Manchester absolutely with him, so 3 fighting away for second, third and fourth position, just allowing Oliver Barker to build a bit of an advantage now in the lead of the race, as attentions are turned by these 3 cars more towards defence rather than attack, and if they slow each other up much more, then Jack Lang in the orange car is not that far away. Jack Manchester thinking about going around the outside of Agostini, but Dominic Jackson will be wise to that. They're just heading up to the yellow flag zone, so there'll be no overtaking here as they head up towards the left-hander at Hamilton, but that doesn't stop Jack Manchester rolling his sleeves up and still trying to get on with it, and he rather needs to, because he's got the orange car of Jack Lang now absolutely with him. The lead pair just starting to get away, because now that Dominic Jackson is more turned towards defence rather than attack, Steve Burgess has just opened up another car length's advantage in second place. Onto the Bentley straight they'll go again. Oliver Barker leading the race, Steve Burgess in second place. Let's not forget he's got an extra 20 seconds success penalty in the pit lane. Dominic Jackson in third place has no additional time to worry about, and neither does Jack Manchester either. They are both off scratch and spend the bare minimum amount of time in the pit lane. The orange car that's behind Jack Manchester, Jack Lang, just an extra 5 seconds to spend for him in the pit lane area. Come the pit stop window, which of course is midway through this race. So through Coram, in towards the braking area for Murray's. The black car now with its red nose of Dominic Jackson, following that damage that was inflicted on the nose of the car in a race earlier on over the course of the weekend. Closing in on Steve Burgess, looking to see what he might be able to do. He's had a couple of third places so far this weekend, Dominic Jackson, and he's in prime position at this stage to come the pit stop window, maybe gain another place or possibly two, because he's the first of the cars in the field that doesn't have any additional time penalty to spend in the pits. And at the moment, Steve Burgess, the champion from last year, is not getting away. The former single-seater racer Dominic Jackson sitting right behind him as they head through the left-hander. Dominic, a former champion out in Formula BMW in Germany some seasons ago, and is now good to see him back racing and as competitive as ever. Jack Manchester's light blue car sitting there in 4th place. Jack Lang's there in 5th place. Richard Baxter completes the top 6. The top 6 have opened up quite a sizable gap actually between themselves and the 7th place car, which is some way adrift. And as they flick their way through the left-hander at Hamilton and on towards the braking area at Oggies, all of the time Oliver Barker is just stretching the lead advantage. The one thing Oliver Barker does not need is any sort of safety car period, because he wants to try and build a buffer so that he can then utilise that advantage come the pit stop window, as I say, where he has to remain stationary for an extra 15 seconds compared to others. So down the Bentley straight in towards the braking area for Brundle and Nelson, through the slightly tighter right-hander at Nelson, and then up towards the bomb hole. Jack Manchester still just outside of the podium places at this stage, the light blue car. And as they then flick their way round through Coreham, you can see Dominic Jackson working tirelessly hard to try and stay with Steve Burgess and look for an opportunity at the same time to try and work the number 4 car through and up into 2nd position. But at the moment, there's nothing doing as far as Dominic Jackson is concerned, because Steve Burgess is just making sure he's neat and tidy. Black and white warning flag going out for somebody with regards to circuit limits, so they must stay within the confines of the circuit and not go beyond the white line or the curbs where there are curbs. So somebody just being forewarned, and if they don't heed the warning, time penalty may well possibly be issued as the trio for 2nd, 3rd and 4th head round through Palmer. Jack Manchester still at the back end of that little 3-car train, with the orange car of Jack Lang just a little bit further back, but 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th place all within touching distance of each other. But the car in 7th place is falling ever more distant. Oliver Barker stretching his legs up towards Hamilton. You can see the retired car of Jason Rishover just over on the grass there on the right-hand side. For Steve Burgess, yet more time lost there to the race leader, and that's largely because he just can't shake away Dominic Jackson at this stage. Dominic is not quite close enough so as to attack, but equally as much Steve Burgess will be conscious that any mistake at all, and it might not just be one place he would lose, it could be a couple. Further down through the order, number 16, Stuart Maloney, fighting away with Konstantin Gukiev at the wheel of the all-white number 9 car as they thread their way through the left-hand kink at Hamilton. And the rest of the field heading round through Hamilton. Here also comes another fight for position. This is Mark Crader fighting away with the red car in the hands of Barry Liversidge. So Barry looking to try and work his way up through the order, and I think just behind those was the Black and Dayglow car. That will be the car that Peter Tyler shares with Tom Gladys over the course of this longer 40-minute endurance race. Dominic Jackson ever closer to Steve Burgess. Of course, Dominic is still the first car that has no additional success seconds to worry about come the pit window, and at the moment he is hot on the heels of Steve Burgess, who will remain stationary for an additional 20 seconds come the pit window opening, which will not be that far away now in reality. All of the cars have to come into the pits, and in the case of some of them that running in the team championship conduct a driver change. In the case of others, they remain stationary, but for some it will be the minimum 45 seconds. For others it will be substantially longer as a result of how they finished in the last race 3 of the weekend, which took place at Rockingham a few months ago. Here comes Steve Burgess, still in 2nd place, still the red-nosed car of Dominic Jackson not too far behind. Jack Manchester keeping in touch as well with the pair ahead. Jack Lang just that little bit further back in the orange car in what is 5th position, and Richard Baxter now just starting to fall away a shade more in 6th place. He can't quite keep with the pace of those ahead. Best of the fight is the trio for 2nd, 3rd and 4th, who yet again are just turning their way out of Oggie's corner. Steve Burgess just raising the dust on the exit of the corner in 2nd position. Jackson still there in 3rd place, and the ever-present danger of Jack Manchester in 4th place, not that far away as well. Onto the Bentley straight they'll go. You can see the advantage that Oliver Barker has now built up between himself and the trio squabbling over 2nd, 3rd and 4th place. It's about a third of the length of the Bentley straight. Jack Lang's there in 5th place. Richard Baxter is in 6th place, and it looks as though we've got a great little fight going on for 7th at the moment. It is Mark Maloney who's there in 7th place, Elliot Goodman in 8th place, Sean Byrne in 9th place, the Irishman, and then it looks as though it's Christian Jeffrey just that little bit further back in 10th position, so final 4 places in the top 10 being disputed, and it is still just about in 7th place. Then Mark Maloney, Elliot Goodman, Sean Byrne, and then the white car with its green and yellow flashes in the hands of Christian Jeffrey. So still together, they turn their way through Murray's and start to accelerate their way onto the Bentley Straight. Mark Maloney having to be very careful, just watching his mirrors, because Elliot Goodman is sitting fully in the slipstream this time as they head onto the Senna Straight. Is he going to be able to squeeze his way through by the time they get to Ritchie's? No is the answer, so the order still remains the same as they then hurdle the car in towards the right-hander at Ritchie's, and from there it's onto the brakes, heavy braking area in towards the right-hander at Wilson. But Mark Maloney is the cork in the bottle at this stage. Elliot Goodman hasn't as yet been able to unlock the door and work his way through, and any mistake from either of these two, Sean Byrne is ready to pounce, and Christian Jeffrey is just that little bit further adrift, hasn't quite fully caught on to the trio ahead. But whilst they're squabbling, I suspect that white car with its green and yellow flashes will soon be right up onto terms, and we will have the fully formed quartet for 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th positions as they thread their way out of Agostini, past Jason Rishover's retired car, and through Hamilton towards Oggies yet again. So through the right-hander at Oggies, nothing doing as yet for Elliot Goodman, so still patiently he waits behind Mark Maloney's car. If he can get a good exit though coming out of Williams, it might give him half an opportunity to sit in the tow down the Bentley Straight. That's what Christian Jeffrey is looking to do to Sean Byrne as well, who just bumps over the curbs on the exit of Williams, uses all of the curbs but no more, and down the Bentley Straight they'll come, slipstreaming occurring, and a bit of debris just being flicked up by one of the cars as well. But Mark Maloney still the cork in the bottle. He's still in 7th place. It's still Elliot Goodman in 8th place, Sean Byrne in 9th place, and Christian Jeffrey, still rather frustratingly as far as he's concerned, remains there in 10th position. So nobody able to pick the pocket of anybody else. They turn their way through the right-hander at Coreham, and now Elliot Goodman taking a slightly wider line through Coreham to maybe have a quick nibble up the inside at Murray's. Wasn't to be, so again they remain in exactly the same order as they chalk yet another lap into the book here on the Snetterton 300 circuit, and it is still Mark Maloney who is at the helm of this 4-car battle for the final 4 places inside the top 10. They turn their way through Ritchie's corner, then in towards the braking area for Wilson yet again. Of course, the gaps close up as they get towards the apexes of the corner. They open up again on the exit of the corner as they thread their way up towards Palmer. The order still remains the same as it does for 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th place. It's still Steve Burgess from Dominic Jackson, from Jack Manchester, and then the orange car of Jack Lang, who was leading the championship coming into this weekend, but has been outscored certainly by Oliver Barker, who was lying 3rd in the championship coming into this weekend. So it's all going to tighten things up as they leave Snetterton. Will head to Brands Hatch on the Grand Prix circuit for their next couple of rounds, and the final rounds of the championship take place back here at Snetterton again in the middle part of October. 7th, 8th and 9th and 10th still together. They've sort of, rather than be a quartet, they've sort of paired up a little bit more now, as Elliot Goodman has managed to stay with the pace of Mark Maloney, whereas unfortunately the cars behind have just dropped a shade further away. And as for Steve Burgess, well, he's still under this pressure from Dominic Jackson, despite everything that Dominic has thrown at it, which is pretty much everything. Well, he has still not as yet been able to work his way through. He might just have to wait until the pit window and then overhaul what will be Steve Burgess, because Steve will remain stationary, not for the standard 45 seconds that everybody has to. He will remain stationary for 65 seconds. Over the start-finish line they'll go. Another lap completed, and as they now go through down the Senna Straight and on towards Ritchie's corner, all of the time Oliver Barker is just pulling away. He's down at the hairpin at Wilson, having built quite a handsome advantage here, and such an advantage that he may be able to hang on to the lead of the race even once the pit window is opened and everybody's conducted their pit stops. Steve Burgess still being kept very busy indeed. There's no let up at all in the pressure that Dominic Jackson is continually applying to the champion from last year, and these two now are just starting to open up a bit more daylight between themselves and the light blue car of Jack Manchester, who still sits there in 4th place but has lost a couple of car lengths maybe in terms of the ground between himself and the pair ahead. And is Jack Manchester falling into the clutches of Jack Lang? Well, not particularly by the look of things, so still 4 close enough to each other. Richard Baxter still completing the top 6 as Oliver Barker heads on towards the Bentley Straight yet again, and you can see the gap that exists between himself and Steve Burgess, who only now appears into shot heading round through Williams. So the gap getting ever larger between 1st and 2nd position. So Oliver Barker is on the Bentley Straight, and as he heads underneath the vehicle bridge, he's got probably more than half of the length now of the Bentley straight between himself and the blue car with its yellow flashes. Steve Burgess, who sits there in second place, still with Dominic Jackson, Jack Manchester and Jack Lang completing the top 5, and Richard Baxter in the second of the light blue cars, one with its pink flashes, slightly more adrift in 5th position. Jack Lang has an extra 5 success seconds to spend in the pits following his exploits in race 3 at Rockingham last time through. But for Steve Burgess, he was the winner of that race, so he is on the maximum amount of time in the pit lane, an extra 20 seconds for Steve Burgess. And at the moment, he's got a car right behind him, Dominic Jackson, who's got no additional time to worry about come the pits, because we didn't see Dominic finish inside the top 5 at Rockingham. Over the start-finish line, there we go. Another lap chalked into the book. The battle's further down through the order continuing as well. Stuart Maloney fighting away with the number 52 car of Mark Richards. They're on the coattails of the all-red car of Barry Liversidge that's just up the road as well. And Barry Liversidge has got the black and Dayglow car just ahead of him. That will be the car that Peter Tyler shares with Tom Gladys in the team championship. Liversidge just locking a brake as he turned in towards Murray's. That compromises his exit and allows Mark Maloney to try and squeeze his way through. And we're going to be 3 wide here because Mark Richards is also trying to get in on the mix as well. So 3 wide over the start-finish line. Barry Liversidge, that brief lock break is going to cost him 2 places there, and Mark Richards gains 2. By the look of things, he was at the tail end of that trio. He gets to the front of it by the time they get towards Richie's corner. So a great move from Mark Richards. And Barry Liversidge, in stark contrast, loses the 2 places. As for the race leader, well, he's just turning his way through Brundle and Nelson now. Traffic to deal with. The Radical SR1 of Andy Chittenden moves out of harm's way and is placed a lap down by our race leader. And Steve Burgess now in second place, has a bit more daylight between himself and Dominic Jackson in third place. The charging Jack Lang still can't do a great deal about closing up on the cars ahead at the moment, and he may well see that the traffic that's just up the road that has been dealt with by our race leader might present the opportunity that he's looking for to close in on the number 15 car of Jack Manchester that still occupies 4th place at this stage of the race. So over the start-finish line goes Jack Manchester, and looking to try and close in on the 3rd place car of Dominic Jackson, who is not that far ahead of him up the road really. Gap between them is not a great deal. Jack Lang is within touching distance as well. The bottom of the Bentley straight, another great little squabble that's going on, is between Mark Craden, number 20, Stuart Maloney, who sits behind him, then Mark Richards, who's lost a place by the look of things, and Barry Liversidge. So they're still busy rolling their sleeves up and getting on with it, and it won't be that much longer before the pit window opens, and one of them will have to blink first and head into the pits, one would have thought. But for the moment, they're enjoying what is a great fight that's going on. Stuart Maloney under attack from Mark Richards heading in towards the braking area for Murray's. Barry Liversidge in the all-red car not too far away. Over the start-finish line they'll go onto another lap, and the pit window is now open. So the pit window is now open. A big mistake for the number 44 car. That's a car that runs in the team championship. Tony and James Barwell's machine, bouncing over the curbs and onto the grass briefly. And this is Sean Byrne, who is under attack still from Christian Jeffrey, the Irishman, under attack. And well, Christian Jeffrey is hugely keen to try and squeeze his way through. Christian, who commutes from the Caribbean to race in the Radical Challenge Championship, as into the pit lane comes, that's the Barwell's car, isn't it? Yeah, Tony and James Barwell. The change of driver is taking place, and out jumps one, in will jump the other, and they have no additional time penalties or success seconds, as they're called, to worry about. As for Jack Manchester, well, he is still sitting there rather frustratingly in what is 4th position. He's got the car of Dominic Jackson just ahead of him. He's got the orange car of the championship leader Jack Lang right behind him. Jack Manchester has no additional success seconds to worry about come the pit window. And is he opting to come into the pits this time through? Yes, he does. And in fact, Dominic Jackson does, and Jack Lang as well. So 3rd, 4th and 5th all in the pits at the same time. Now Jack Lang has an extra 5 seconds to spend in the pit, so he's going to lose out to the cars that he was doing battle with in reality, because that is what really shakes the order up. Each time we have one race 3, you look back to where you finished in the previous race 3, and if you're in the top 5, you end up with an additional time penalty. Sean Byrne is in. Also Christian Jeffrey, who he was doing battle with, heads into the pit lane as well. More and more cars are going to be peeling their way in, which is going to be Stuart Maloney, who comes in, and Mark Richards as well, and both of those just remain stationary for what is the minimum period of 45 seconds in the pit lane. It's all very full there in the pit lane. Jack Manchester is just being serviced by the team. Scorpio Motorsport team go to work on Sean Byrne's car, as Stuart Maloney makes his way down the pit lane. Out goes Jack Lang, and where is he going to feed back through into the order? Sean Byrne's still stationary because the clock hasn't ticked through as yet, and the countdown is just about to take place. And there goes Steve Burgess, only now heading back out onto circuit. Of course, he had an additional 20 seconds to spend in the pits, having won the last race 3, the last endurance race at Rockingham. So he is now looking to try and work his way back up through the order. This car, though, still is yet to stop as yet. This is Oliver Barker, the race leader. He's got an extra 15 success seconds to spend in the pits. And well, Oliver Barker now is going to continue round over the start-finish line and leave it until later in the window. Can't leave it too late, though. Must pit within the designated pit window. As back out of the pits goes Mark Richards. This is Brian Murphy, the number 57 car, comes through the bomb hole and bounces all over the grass. Lots and lots of dust on the tyres that he'll need to clean up. And, well, he's just about managed to keep the car on the circuit and rejoins without too much of a problem. Rod Goodman at the wheel of the beautifully liveried number 31 car heads down pit lane. Mark Maloney is also in, the number 86 car. We saw Stewart in earlier on, and that is the number 10 car in the hands of John Caldwell heading out onto circuit. So the fight's continuing on track, and that is a spin. That is Mark Richards, who had a rotation heading in towards Brundle and Nelson, so he gathers up the moment and gets going again as Oliver Barker, now the race leader, heads down pit lane. So Oliver Barker just leaving it an extra couple of laps compared to others to head into the pit lane. He will remain stationary for 60 seconds in total, so 45 seconds the standard period, plus 15 success seconds as a result of finishing second last time out. Quick conversation going on between Oliver Barker and team. Thumbs up from the driver, meaning that everything is good. And then the clock being watched by Oliver Barker, and he'll get back into this race. And where is he going to feed his way back out? Is he going to have sufficient gap between himself and the likes of Dominic Jackson so as to hang on to the lead of the race? Jack Lang's being kept busy at the moment. He's trying to work his way through and past the number 10 car of John Caldwell, borrowing brother Brian's car for this weekend. Brian unable to race at the moment. And back out onto track goes Dominic Jackson. So pit window still continuing. Squabbles on track being reformed once all of the cars have come into the pits. And by the look of things, Sean Byrne has been passed by Christian Jeffrey. Now, that probably happened during the pits, actually. They came into the pits together, and Christian Jeffrey is now ahead of Sean Byrne. As waiting patiently in the pit lane is Brian Murphy. The clock ticks to 0, so he heads back out onto track. That grassy moment at the bomb hole, I'm sure, just a distant memory. And this, number 4, Dominic Jackson, the race leader, under attack from Oliver Barker, whilst they're trying to put a lap on the Barwell's number 44 car as well. Barker has the momentum, has the inside line for Agostini, and goes through to take up the lead of the race. But Dominic Jackson switches back on the exit of the corner and instantly has retaken the lead. So they've swapped and swapped back within the case of just a corner, and it's Dominic Jackson that has reasserted himself back into the lead of the race. Of course, he had no additional success seconds to worry about. Oliver Barker had 15 additional seconds in the pit lane and knows that he's got to get on with it here, but the door is closed as he has a quick look up the inside at Williams corner. So it is the number 4 car of Dominic Jackson that leads the race. Oliver Barker, already twice a race winner this weekend, in second place. The blue car is Jack Manchester. He's there in 3rd position, and in the distance, the orange car, Jack Lang, is sitting there in 4th place at this stage. So they turn their way through Brundle and Nelson. Jack Manchester sitting there in 3rd place, had no additional success seconds to spend in the pit lane area, as raising the dust in 2nd place is Oliver Barker. He just needs to be careful there, dipped a wheel onto the dust. That might take a corner or so just to clean those tyres up, and that's the last thing he needs at this stage, to lose any time with some dusty tyres. Neat and tidy, however, is he out of Murray's, and as they then head onto the start-finish line to chalk another lap into the book, Dominic Jackson still leads by the slenderest of margins from Oliver Barker in 2nd place. Jack Manchester there in 3rd position as they head in towards the braking area for the right-hander at Wilson. And well, Dominic Jackson would dearly like to try and claim a win. He's had a couple of 3rd places this weekend, on top of the 3rd place he had at Silverstone earlier on in the season, but he's not had a win. Whereas for Oliver Barker, he's already had 2 this weekend, and he also won earlier on in the season, did Oliver Barker, claiming his win at Spa-Francorchamps in the middle of the 3 races that we had there. Onto the brakes, in towards the left-hander at Agostini, the man from Lincoln. Dominic Jackson leads the race, the graduate out of the Radical SR1 Cup Championship. Oliver Barker sitting there in 2nd position. Jack Manchester, who claimed his first podiums of the season earlier on this weekend, sitting there in what is 3rd position, but they're all very close to each other still as they turn their way out of Oggies and then start to sprint their way up towards Williams. And as they then get onto the Bentley straight, nobody's quite close enough to do a great deal about the other. You can see Jack Lang in 4th place in the distance and looking as though he's actually closing in a shade more on the cars that sit just up the road from him. But Dominic Jackson looking as though things are well under control at the moment. Can't afford to make a mistake because Oliver Barker is still very much in his Dunlop wheel tracks as the 2 Radical SR3s, 1500cc Suzuki powered cars, turn their way through Coreham and then up towards the left-hander at Murray's, which will conclude yet another 2.9689 mile lap here at Snetterton on the 300 circuit. So over the start-finish line goes Dominic Jackson. Oliver Barker still chasing as hard as he possibly can. The clock continuing to tick down as well in this 40-minute race. And is there enough time for Oliver Barker to try something, to try and work his way through into contention? Well, it looks like Dominic Jackson made a very small mistake there. There's a little bit of contact between the pair of them. Jackson bounces over the curbs on the exit of the corner, and well, that small mistake was all Oliver Barker needed. He instantly pounced on it and has put himself through and into the lead of the race here. Dominic Jackson in 2nd place. He just didn't quite get to the apex, and there was just a radical width, and Oliver Barker was able to squeeze his way up the inside, and from there, well, always you were going to see Dominic Jackson possibly pushed wide on the exit of the corner, and that's exactly what happened. He bounced over the curbs, and that has just cost him that little bit of time, and Oliver Barker is through and into the lead of the race. Further down through the order, we've still got some fights continuing as well. This is Mark Crader, then Stuart Maloney and Mark Richards, all busy beavering away. They're going to be fighting for places down towards the bottom of the top 10 and just outside at this stage, and Barry Liversidge is not too far away from them as well. He's had a busy old race as Barry Liversidge, and this is Steve Burgess looking to try and work his way up through the order. The car that sits directly ahead of him looks as though it's car number 28, Elliot Goodman, so this will be for what is 6th and 7th places. And this fight here that we were picking up on is further down through the order. Mark Crader, Stuart Maloney, then Mark Richards and Barry Liversidge, and all of those will be fighting for places, as I say, just outside of the top 10. Barry Liversidge running a little bit wide that time heading out of Agostini, so he's dropped himself off the coattails of the cars that he was doing battle with. For Oliver Barker, though, more traffic to deal with before too much longer. The number 31 car of Rod Goodman is the next car that he's going to want to try and put a lap down. Thankfully, though, he's got enough time so as to just pick his way through and past. He's also going to meet that car in the right place, which is on the centre straight, and should be able to squeeze his way through as they head up towards Ritchie's corner. But having now put a lap on Rod Goodman, there'll be further cars that he needs to deal with over the course of this next lap or so. Oliver Barker safely through the right-hander at Wilson, accelerating his way up towards Palmer, no longer under any pressure from Dominic Jackson, who has just sort of faltered in the latter stages of this race. He's tried terribly hard to hang on to the lead of the race and maybe just overwork those tyres a little bit, because he has dropped ever more away from Oliver Barker, who is looking as though he's potentially on for a clean sweep of victories this weekend at Snetterton, and we have seen that happen once so far this season. That happened when Bradley Smith claimed all 3 victories at Silverstone on the Grand Prix circuit. Bradley not competing this weekend, but Oliver Barker is looking as though he's going to replicate that feat as long as he can continue round on this, which I think should now be the penultimate lap of the race. So out of Williams, on towards the Bentley straight goes Oliver Barker, daylight building between himself and the black car with its red nose of Dominic Jackson in 2nd place. Jack Manchester is there in 3rd place, and only now heading out of Williams to the top of the Bentley straight is the orange car of Jack Lang. So nobody really close enough to anybody else, looking as though the podium places are largely settled now in this race. But there's still traffic that could come into play here. Rod Goodman's car about to be placed a lap down by Dominic Jackson, who can't quite squeeze his way through as they head round through the bomb hole, so it'll have to wait until he gets towards Coreham to work his way through and past, and that's allowed Jack Manchester to close a little bit more now onto the coattails of Dominic Jackson. So the traffic just having a part to play in the latter stages of this one. But for Oliver Barker, he is over the start-finish line and is now heading on to his last lap of the race, and Oliver Barker is looking good to try and make it a clean sweep of victories this weekend in the Radical Challenge Championship here at Snetterton. Further down through the order, Christian Jeffrey showing the scars of the squabbles earlier on. He's there in 8th position at the moment. 9th place is going to be the number 18 car that's just behind him in the hands of Sean Byrne, and that car there, Mark Maloney, is going to complete the top 10 by the look of things. The number 86 car, who's had a solid weekend of racing this weekend. So they're just about to head on to their final lap of the race. And as we look towards our race leader, well, is down towards the bottom of the Bentley Straight for the final time. Dominic Jackson in second place, coming under a bit more pressure though from Jack Manchester. That's going to be close, potentially on the charge to the line. And as Oliver Barker turns his way out of Brundle and Nelson, all he needs to do is safely negotiate the bomb hole, which he's done, round through Corham and up towards Murray's, and it's going to be 3 out of 3 this weekend at Snetterton for Oliver Barker, who was racing in the Radical SR1 Cup Championship last year, has moved over to the Radical Challenge Championship and instantly got to grips with the greater power and downforce of the Radical SR3. He comes through and claims victory number 3 of the weekend in Norfolk. Oliver Barker makes it a clean sweep of wins here in Norfolk, with Dominic Jackson in second place and Jack Manchester completing the top 3. Fourth goes the way of Jack Lang, with Richard Baxter in 5th place and Steve Burgess in 6th. 7th was Elliot Goodman, 8th was Christian Jeffrey, 9th was Sean Byrne, and completing the top 10 was Mark Maloney. A great weekend of racing here at Snetterton. Some super fights along the way, but that man there, for the 3rd time this weekend, stands on the top step of the podium at Snetterton. Maximum points in the championship for Oliver Barker.
You got yourself a fantastic lead at the start, knowing you had your success penalties in the pits, and you came out only just in second moment and sort of challenging even as you came out, and you had to fight yourself back up there again, and you did it, and then stretched your legs.
Yeah, when I came out of the pits, I was hoping I was going to be out in the lead, and I saw him just shoot past. Obviously, had the momentum into turn 1. I was behind him for a couple of laps, and he made a bit of a mistake through turn 1, ran wide, and that was my opportunity to get past him. Managed to make it stick, and then pulled away, and just maintaining the gap towards the end, really, trying not to make any mistakes.
Yeah, it was unfortunate because I had a little bit of a gap, and then on the exit of turn 1, as Ollie said, I just ran wide and had to back out of it.
It'd have been pressurising you for the rest of the race anyway. Is the only way you can console yourself, I guess.
I'd have preferred that.
True enough.
Really good result in the end. Yeah, I think I credit it to the start, really. Started 7th and made up 4th, and then really battled hard for it and kind of kept in the pit stops and, just pushed through it. Did the best I could.
Apart from Jack Manchester.
That's all from Snetterton. A great weekend of racing. Join us next time out when we're at Brands Hatch on the Grand Prix circuit.